welcome back to another PlayBASIC blog. It is currently, the 12th of October 2023. What are we looking at? Well, a new change to the website. Something that was missing was an ability to reset your password if you've forgotten it. So I had to build a new page for this, all the regular stuff. This is the test version that's offline, so all this is just garbage for the time being. So one difference with this system is that you've got to enter your password. It doesn't send the password to that email address at all. It uses that as a second way of verification against your account. What I don't want is spam bots just coming to the page and running through a whole bunch of usernames and firing emails at those people's accounts. That's what I don't want. So the assumption is here, the only person that will know the account name and the email address is the person who owns it. So it's much less likely to get through for PB to be sending emails to people to their accounts. It doesn't send the email anywhere else but to the email address that was registered with the account. We just hit password, and that's succeeded because I know those details are correct. Here it's just dumping a test of our response email, which looks a lot like the activation email because it basically is the same principle. To do this, when you make a request to change the password, you're not changing the password at this time. The email is sent to your registered email address, and then if you receive this and you want to change the password, you would click the link here and there'll be a field down here showing the new password, and that will expire within whatever it is, 7 days or whatever it is. I forget what it's even set to now. So if someone enters your name and gets your email address correct and then hits expects to change your password without you realizing it, which could happen because bots are out there all the time just trying to log into forums and accounts all the time, constantly. This means that you've got some protection from that. So even if they got through and they found your details, because if you leave your email address public on the forums, for example, or in a post or in a source code or whatever, someone will eventually work out the two things match. This way, if you ever get an email from the site, you can just ignore the email, do nothing, and then your password is still what it was before. If I click this link now, nothing actually happens. The back end of this is not built. If we were here, we type the wrong email address or whatever, we'll get, standard error. All right, so if you've got if you type your name in here, you get your email address correct and you hit your reset, this will be emailed to you, and when this is connected, that will, if you click the link through, you will do the reset, and the site will actually take this ticket and then actually action the ticket out. It will do that thing. All right. So on the actual page, once you've made a submission, you would see a simple response, hey, thanks for doing this thing here. We've sent you an email, and the idea is you go off and check your emails. Might take a minute or two or whatever. Hopefully it gets there. It doesn't get caught up in a spam filter, which most of our emails do get caught up in spam filters. But you go back to log in. Once you've clicked on the link that was there before, it will reset the new password, and you would enter the password here, and life goes on. That's the website stuff. code-wise, we've got there's a conversation with Steve recently about the rounding functions, which have they're kind of bewildering. Those functions are kind of bewildering at the best of times. So I wrote a bit of a unit test. What this is doing is it lets you compare the behavior of another version of PlayBASIC to the version you're running in today. Wow. So it's a bit of a little library here that runs through and produces results, stores the results on disk, and then the idea is that and then it stores the results on disk under the name of the version you're running. That makes sense. So here I'm running in 165, I guess, 165 beta 10, and it's comparing those results against 165 P4. And as you can see, we're getting differences. Here it's saying round down and round up are a mismatch. So the round down is not equal at this 19.4 value, and for either round down or round up. So there's a difference between the functionality. So I've got older tests that work much the same way as this, but I'm not quite sure what's happened to them. Like, I probably got them somewhere, but I'm on the laptop here, not on the development box, which has got all of that 20 years of that stuff. And trying to find things now is kind of tedious. But this is sort of handy structure for working out whether things, are the same or not between builds. And you can run the test and you get a different result, or something's altered, the behavior's altered. Whether we care or not, that's another thing, Because if you compared every function in 164 and in 165, you'll find differences between them. Most of those things are rounding. I hate rounding at floating point. It really is frustrating. Things do weird stuff. Just the way it is. Right, okay, so this is that particular test, and the other thing I was doing, of course, which was is that even there? I'll run the low res test just as an interim. I swapped a bit of this to use one of the poke multiple bytes routines, and we're capturing the screen now, so we've lost a bunch of frame rate, but it was running about 300 frames per second. So we're doing a pixel by pixel plot of an 8-bit screen. So we're emulating basically a SNES, all of these retro systems. They're 8-bit. 64, those kind of systems. They're probably even to the point where you can do some 16-bit stuff. But the resolution here is, I think it's set to be about the size of, it's 256 by 256. Not sure if we're going to crash this or not, but I know, it's fine. The timing's just running off the timer. So the scrolling is based off how much time has elapsed, not what the frame rate is currently running at. Because we're scrolling in full low-res pixels, there's a little bit of a, it's not as smooth as what you'd expect on a modern computer. What you could do is what systems like the Amiga did in the AGA chipsets, and they added a smooth scroll register, which is where you can scroll half pixels. That would give you a full one-to-one mapping of your monitor to the low-res screen. But it's a bit of a trivial thing. That uses some of the modern features of here, I think. Does it? To update it? Oh, there you go. I've only added one of them. So you can do read 2 pixels and write 4 bytes out. That same process will work across all of these things. We're doing the leftovers with poke 2 bytes. So that translation loop of the byte by byte version of the screen, we're doubling the width of each pixel. We're using that with just a for next loop to do that manually. We could do a stretch of the screen at the end, but if we want to do, a mishmash of low res and then the actual physical resolution over the top, that means you can't do that. If you get what I'm saying. Which would just be for, for giggles really, Of course, the other thing that I was doing really was working on the new Lexer. Alright, so I think this is the Lexer demo. Let's have a look. Doing a memory allocation test, and we can click through to look at the a Lexed version of ourself, I think in this case. Due to capturing's done a number in the frame rate, but our source code is 1.2 megabytes in size, and it's lexed that document in 14 milliseconds. In other words, we're getting almost 90,000 characters per millisecond being phrased. Pretty handy. This source code we're looking at is the entire PlayBASIC to DLL application. All the source code managed into one big blob, and we're just loading it in and phrasing it. So the actual Lexer is running pretty well. Made a bunch of optimizations to it. Just put the data in a better format or an easier format for it to deal with, and that helped a lot actually. And got rid of some of the slower functions. There was a terrifyingly slow function that would convert a string into a float. I'm not quite sure why it was that slow, but yeah, it was. And it was causing the load time to go, from hundreds of milliseconds down to 14, 15 by itself. But yeah, this is the Lexer process. And this is using the new DLL to do this job. The Lexer will be standalone. It will be for PlayBASIC, really. In theory, you could use that in secondary projects too, because you could pretty much pull in the Lexer into your other project, like an IDE, and then do those things. Here is what I was actually testing this the other day. If you see the green line here, this is a cursor. So if I could step through the document, token by token, character by character, and I think I was about to implement some insertion, but I haven't done that in here. The initial document is broken up in memory, but not into separate strings. That's one of the reasons why it's quick. So to phrase the code, we don't need to have separate strings for each individual fragment. But to make an editor, you do need that. You do need to have, when things change, you need to actually modify the string fragment and create a new one, which is nothing, provided we don't have to rebuild the entire document all the time, which we don't, that would run fine. The source code could be loaded in, processed, we can edit a bit, and then dump it back out. No dramas at all. And most of the document would be in its original form. If you spent like an hour or so editing, you would change a lot of it, I guess. But generally when you edit something, you're working on a function or two or small elements of the code. The rest of the document is not really changing at all, which works in our favour. So the theory is that you could, if we have a basic display from PB, and it's a more modern display, you can use the Lexer to make a simple graphical IDE like the one I use over here, which is doing the same kind of principle. This is not even an IDE, it's the text editor. Just that simple syntax highlighting. You know, it's nothing fantastic. But I like the idea of it being wider, and if you had something that was had some awareness of what's going on in the document, that would be cool. Yeah, so in that editor, like imagine we don't need the docking source inspector stuff here. I'm so used to never using it because it has those crash bugs in it, you know. I can't modify those things. I've got a version of the source code, but underlying the main problem with the editor as it stands is it's built around an edit control that we don't have the source code for, which means that when you run into those faults with it, you're stuffed. You can't do anything with it. You know? So the alternative would be to build something in, you know, a more modern one. But I actually think if you have a simple graphical interface built on top of that, it removes the platform problem. And if that interface is platform agnostic, then you're fine. You can do, you know, issues would be things like, you know, character mapping would be different on different systems. That's always going to be a pain in the backside. But they're feasible. You could get it to work. Mightn't be the best thing ever, but you could get it to work. And if people are upset, they could go use, you know, a Visual Studio, you know, or umpteen other editors out there and configure a tool that is their build or make tool, which is kind of what the IDE does at the moment, doesn't it? It takes all the source codes, bundles them all together, and spits them out to the compiler, and then it does the next process of that. If we had it generalized, if our Lexing code here was generalized into, hey, this is a project loading thing, and that project loader then if the pre-process was successful, then we call the compiler. You can do that from anywhere, in theory. So you could use whatever, you know, front end you want to build with. Ideally, we want to have, you know, things built into PB that are particularly PlayBASIC orientated. You know, to make life easier. It's got to be, it's got to have type awareness. You know, whether it's a small amount or a lot, but it's got to have some of it. Anyway, so that's pretty much the state of things at the moment. Time has been split across a bunch of stuff, which is always frustrating. But look, we're making progress, but we're not making much progress. If you want to be helpful, write some things, get some things written, you know, make some programs, post them on the forums, post them on the social media groups, etc. Because really, I can't write the product, I can't do all of the web maintenance, etc., talk to people, emails, and make you examples to make you interested all at once. I just can't do it. It's impossible. So yeah, I mean, the more help in that regard would be really on point at the moment. We're facing a pretty huge uphill battle. You know, the amount of work that's in front of where we are is kind of staggering, really. Yeah, I don't think people realise that the first builds of PlayBASIC took years to write, and not just for one person. There was a group of 3 or 4 people working on this thing every day, and now it's pretty much just me doing it. I mean, just doing the website is it's not massive. It's, and all the things that we already exist, but we've got to be brought in line with things. There's got the user tools that you need to make having an account more useful, so we can build a community rather than, because I never wanted this to be a central thing. I never wanted it to be about me. In fact, I have no interest in that whatsoever. I don't give a shit, to be honest. Excuse my language, but I don't care about that stuff. I built it to help replicate when I was younger, using the tools that we had available at the time to give you a leg up to make stuff, whether it's games or tools or whatever you want to make. I don't really give a crap, to be honest. But that's where I feel that's been taken away from people in recent years. The last decade in particular, God. I'm a member of a few Facebook groups now that deal with teaching coding to newbies, pretty much. And every day I look at those posts, I'm terrified by there's such a disconnect between even getting started with programming. People just haven't got a clue how to do anything. And over the years, that's become more and more evident when you get emails from people about simple things that are about their own computer, not about PlayBASIC. If you don't know how to use Windows, then you can't come and ask me to teach you how to do it, because that's what Microsoft are there for. So I can actually understand why people are going, well, where do I jump in at? How do I sit down and write something that even makes sense? How do I just go print my name on screen? I mean, the level of the amount of steps that are required to get to that point with a lot of these simple systems is terrifying. So that's the niche that PB is meant to fill. Hey, here's a simple tool, simple interface, simple command sets. It's not the fastest, it's not the biggest thing, it doesn't want to be any of those things. It wants to be consistent. So, all right, here's a simple language that will work across the last 20 years of Windows. There's very few products that can do that. In fact, I can't think of any, to be brutally honest. Eventually, we'll have to update PB and make it 64-bit, right? We will. Will that make any difference to new programmers? No. Not one iota. Because all that does is it expands the amount of data your program can have in memory at once. That's all it does. So it's big. It's hard to be simple and to the point, right? That makes sense to people. This is the recurring theme I see all the time. Every time I talk to new people about programming, every time I talk to people who've been around PlayBASIC for years, I'm staggered by the fact they just don't know simple things. It's like, that's frustrating. Those things are probably communication problems, where we assume people understand what we're saying, but they don't. So bringing the documentation online, improving the FAQs, making better examples, that's a never-ending process. I mean, how do you make that suit every single person? It's not possible. We can make it suit some people, you know. But I just always want this thing to be, you fire it up, you've got a simple interface. Hey, here's my simple interface. I can type some simple code. Hello world. Oops. If I can spell it, that'd be good. This stuff here is gobbledygook to most people, but it's not beyond the realms of understanding, you know. If I want to draw a line, I can draw a line, you know. For most people, when they're starting to code, like when I was starting to code on the Apple II, I mean, all I knew was really basic commands, some print statements, some plotting statements, and I made games out of that. If you go back and look through older projects of some of the people who were in the PlayBASIC community in the past, their initial programs were very simple, and then as they went through, they learned more and more things and expanded their own tool set, really, to create more and more complicated examples. So even though the tool is simple, its level of complexity comes down to your understanding of it, as always. Oh well, we've got a bit off kilter then. Anyway, so the current sort of workflow is getting the website, another quick revision of the website, getting the next step of the Lexer and Fraser, doing those bug fixes with the rounding stuff, and then that will roll into the next changes, etc. So all we ask is, get making things, interact with please, for the love of God, interact with our social media content, because really there's no point producing it if you don't interact with it. It takes too much time, too much effort, and to have 3 people view something, it's like, well, what's the point? Honestly, I'm not going to spend the next 20,000 hours producing a new version of PlayBASIC for you if you don't care, because I don't care already. I've got better things to do than give people free software, right? So it's honestly that simple. So pull your fingers out. All right, that's enough of that. See you next time. Later. Bye.